All right. Well, welcome back to God. I was going to say it's Groundhog Day, but I guess this would technically be Groundhog Year. The Inside BBI with John and Eric, John McDevitt. With me, as always, senior editor of Big Blue Interactive, Mr. Eric Kennedy. And Eric, first thing we were going to originally discuss was, well, what happened in the Bears game. And then we would introduce Cy, who's going to be joining us shortly. And the Giants went and did something that I kind of was hoping they were going to do. I didn't think they would pull it off. Actually, I thought for sure they'd find reasons not to, and that is they fired Brian Daboll today. Immediate thoughts.
Well, first, before I get into that, I'm looking at comments from guys trying to provoke me and chat by saying, let's hire Wink Martindale as an offense. I was the head coach. I hope that's a joke. Anyways, bittersweet. I don't like seeing people get fired. Look, Daboll had to go. The writing was on the wall. You and I knew this was coming. We just didn't know when. It was either going to happen during the season or it was going to happen after the season. No duh, but it happens now. They probably shouldn't have brought him back. I know people are celebrating, but it's just another indication that the Giants are a poorly run organization, that they've fired yet another coach. So we've fired Coughlin, we fired McAdoo, Shermer, Judge, now Daboll, and that's only in the last decade. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous. So, but he had to go. And now the big question is, it looks like Shane's staying. And the big question is Kafka have a real chance to keep the job, or are they going to bring somebody new? And with the press release that they issued today, it sounds like they're going to move on from Kafka, but maybe he's got a shot at keeping the job. So,
yeah, I saw a lot of people kind of up in arms when it was said the Giants are going to be auditioning Kafka. First off, why wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not going to go, we're going to put Mike Kafka in, and when the season's over, we're going to fire him, and that's it. You're going to say we're going to audition him, and I don't know how it works as far as compensation goes. If he does decently and somebody wants to offer him a job, do we get compensation if they hire him away? I don't know how that works. Right at the moment, though, I don't really care. It's kind of it's just words that they're saying. The key is they fired Brian Daboll in season, which a lot of people didn't think they would do. I wanted that Dart Daboll connection separated. Mm-hmm. If you knew you were going to fire him, and it certainly seemed like, I mean, you can't have 3 years in a row of starting 2-8 and think you're keeping your job. I mean, I don't care if you had won the Super Bowl 3 years, 3 years before that, had a couple of decent years, and then you ran 3 straight seasons of 2-8, you're probably getting fired. The fact that the Giants kept this guy just because he was 9-7-1 the first year after what was just a downward spiral since then is amazing.
He won 20 games in 4 years here. So, and 9 of them came in his first year. So think about that. I mean, that's really bad. I mean, that's really, really bad. And he's only won 5 in the last 2 years. So, I mean, it's a bottom line business. You win, you got to win. He didn't win. He knows it. He knows the score. You could tell him from his body language. I thought he was going to get fired last year. And I think a lot of people in the press thought he was going to get fired last year before the Colts game. And he held on to his job. And maybe, as I've said, that is the one bright spot, was he lobbied for Dart, and maybe he's the reason Dart's here. That's what I've speculated. I don't know if that's true. I see Cy is.
Yeah, let's. I'm gonna throw Cy up here, and he can join right in. So joining us right now, there he is, Mr.
It's a great day.
Cy from BBI, if you don't know, Dave Syvertsen of Ourlads Scouting. You've been calling it. We've been calling it. It was really, the writing was on the wall actually this time last year. Somehow things changed in the offseason. You kind of were hoping. He got his quarterback in the spring. The summer looked okay. And then we were basically right back. You've been calling. So Dave, just your thoughts in general, kind of the fact that they made the move now. And then what are your thoughts on that? And then on the go forward as far as that goes.
Yeah, I think after the Denver loss, you would need a miracle to bounce back from that. Like 5 straight wins, Dart taking off, you're in playoff contention. But that was the beginning of the end to me, beyond what happened last year. And then this past loss to Chicago, he looked like he knew on the sideline that you're losing this game, I'm out. And you have 4 10-point leads in the fourth quarter this season, and you're 0-4. I mean, I felt like on X, every week I was able to say, oh, for the first time ever, the Giants lost this way. And how many times has that been said in the recent 2-3 years where you only have so many of those lives until you're going to get canned. And in terms of what's going to happen from here, it'll be fun to see what direction they go in with the head coach search. I agree with doing it mid-season. I don't think this is going to hurt Jaxson Dart. In some ways, I think it could help him. But I'm worried that an A-level grade coach is not going to want to come to New York because of the GM being a potential lame duck.
Yeah.
That is example, that whole weird Jacksonville situation with Liam Cohen. He did not want to work with Trent Baalke. Now, Trent Baalke does not have a great reputation as a GM in the league, but that was a weird situation where he said no, then he came back, and it really came down to who he wants to work with. And I'm not sure what Joe Shane's reputation is around the league, but that could prevent a head coach from wanting to come here that you really want to work with Jaxson Dart.
It may not be just the fact that he could be a lame duck. It may be what you said in the second part of what your comments is, that they may not want to work with Joe Shane.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if it's getting around the league or not. And again, we've speculated. We don't know what's true. How much the nepotism that runs rampant in this organization might start scaring away prospective hot. Now, look, someone's going to take the job. It's a question of, are you going to get that guy? And we want to get into that with you later on, because I think you've been working on, unrelated to this, but maybe you had an eye on this. I think you've been keeping an eye on the hothead coaching prospects that might be out there. And the names, again, not the Bill Belichick's and the John Grudens, but the young up and coming people. And so I think, there's that with Shane, but I think I'd like to get your view on this. I think a lot of us were worried that if this season went south like it has, if you had told us that Daboll was getting fired at this point in the season coming into this, we would have figured that Dart really flamed out or it didn't look good. But that's not the case. So John has brought up in the past that now Dart is something attractive to lure people here, I would think, too.
Absolutely. And that's I think the saving grace to getting the grade A level coach is, all right, hey, maybe I don't want to work with the nepotism of the New York Giants organization and or Joe Shane, but you got the quarterback. And every coach wants to work with the quarterback. Ben Johnson went to Chicago because of Caleb Williams. I don't know what he thinks about Ryan Poles, but you're in Chicago in that situation here. You're in New York. If you win here, you're a legend for a long time. And you get to start off with a quarterback that you don't need to draft, that already has a year of experience and has played at a very high level. He's been doing things that no one's ever done to start off a rookie career on a bad team without a number one wide receiver and running back. So again, talking about Jaxson Dart from a head coach perspective has to get you excited, and it is a major selling point. So that might actually trump over some of the negativity that comes from the surrounding situation as well.
And before John jumps in, pass rush is here too, and left tackle. So I would think that the combination of those three, it seems like a lot of people, when they're trying to get their blueprint for a team, quarterback, pass rush, left tackle, that all seems to be in place. Yep. So I would think it would be attractive.
Yeah, I think it's an attractive job. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, I do. One thing before jumping to that, I wanted to just go back on the Daboll thing. Would you agree that first off, I had been saying all along, at some point, if you know in your gut, you're probably going to let the guy go, that separating him and Daboll and Dart sooner than later was kind of important, because I mean, I thought the scene in the Philadelphia game was probably the most egregious piece to everything that Daboll has done. Is when you're jumping into that tank, you're trying to get your quarterback out there. That reeked of desperation. That reeked of, you have attached yourself to this guy in such a way that it's not just he's a good quarterback and you're excited about him, but your meal ticket to get you where you needed to go. And I thought it played out even worse on Sunday, when he's clearly knocked out. There was a point when he was tackled, I literally said to my wife, I'm like, holy shit, I think Dart's really hurt. He wasn't even moving.
Yeah.
First off, that's an indictment on the NFL. Where's your observer, by the way, who should have called down and go, yeah, he's laying down, probably shouldn't just go back into the game. But the fact that you put him back in there and it took you a couple of plays to realize something was wrong with him, it really, to me, it just said that this guy has put so much into Dart only that you can't keep that going. The risk reward became so very little on the reward side. All you had really was building his experience up, because we're not winning. Even 3-4 games is not getting you anywhere based on how it's gone. The risk is you're going to damage him permanently. Giants had to make that move because of that.
I agree. I think I tweeted that out yesterday, that part of this idea of, because yesterday at this time, or yesterday afternoon after the game, it was an idea to fire him. It was a strong likelihood, but it had not happened yet. And I listed a few reasons why. And just the repeated mistakes, the roster management, the weird back, hey, I'm aggressive, but I'm not aggressive. Like, what was that field goal towards the end of the game? That's not something he would have done even 3 weeks ago. It just doesn't have an identity, right?
Yes.
But one of them's like, he might be a detriment to Jaxson Dart at this point, because he's trying to use Jaxson Dart to win a few games so he can maintain a job. Even if I think I saw a stat, he's been hit 77 times in 7 games, number 1 in the NFL. He leads the NFL in quarterback design runs. That was something I read. I have not cross-checked that yet, but I would put him up there. I've tracked every quarterback stat around the league, because I'm constantly feeding into the public about how good of a runner he is. I think he leads the NFL in rushing yards by a quarterback since he's become a starter, since week 4, more than Lamar Jackson, right up there with Josh Allen. So I do believe that he probably has been sent on. And what was the best offense we've seen under Brian Daboll? 2022 first year, the Daniel Jones, a lot of design runs. It was their most efficient play of that season. Everything gets measured now, efficiency. And that was their most efficient play call. So he went back to what worked. But in this situation, it's a battering ram and a guy at Jaxson Dart who is equally responsible, in my opinion, for being a little too aggressive. I'll write that in a review that'll come out tomorrow, that at some point that dude's going to need to learn he cannot play like that. It will not work.
Right.
And
I'm sorry, Don.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say, what bothers me is, like, it's a weird sort of like fine line, right? You can't take the running part of his game out of it. And I'm totally on board with that. But you don't have to call a power sweep on a second down where you've got like a guard and a tackle pulling and he's running in behind them. You're running into the meat of their defense. You have not scared them back. So their defenders are still playing everybody's within about 15 yards of the line of scrimmage. You're talking even the safeties are within that range. You're basically asking him to essentially take on some of the carries you were giving to Cam Scatterbo, that sort of physical run style, because you're not going to get that from Devin Singletary, and you're not getting that from Tracy's definitely not that guy. You've literally put so much on this guy. You could see that coming. It was much different than misdirection by the goal line. You're running a tight end across, and then Dart keeps the ball and follows the guard through, and he just walks into the end zone. That's a different play than this power sweep. Up by 10 points, by the way. That to me was just, you literally just signed your pink slip right on that play call.
Yep, I agree. I agree with you. Everything you said, I completely agree with. And so this goes beyond just wins and losses and roster management. It goes like, are you actually going to hurt the future of this franchise? Right. And have you done other things to hurt the future of this franchise? I mean, it's not like he didn't have a long time. He had plenty of time here to turn this around, or at least show that he can get the most out of a team. Because right now, Eric, you just said it. You have a pass rush. You have the left tackle. You have a really good rookie running back. You have some talent on the team, but the team is not playing any better. You could say they're more competitive, but they're not winning. Right. And that's the coach's job. And I do think the right coach can turn this around next year. I believe that. I think this can be a contending playoff team in 2026 if they get the right coach.
I think 4 things probably signed his death knell here. He couldn't win. This goes back 4 years. He couldn't win in the NFC East. I've been harping on this for a long time. His 2 defensive coordinators flamed out that he picked, and that was a huge factor in this. Something that you've been bringing up. There was this narrative going into this year that the thing that was holding the offense back was Daniel Jones. And if they got rid of Daniel Jones, you would finally see the creativity of Brian Daboll. So they get rid of Daniel Jones, who now goes on and has his career year so far with the Colts. And the creativity, and you've been talking about this in your game reviews, where's the creativity in this offense with Brian Daboll? Where's the genius? Is he living off his reputation from his days in Buffalo at this point? Because it doesn't seem like, you mentioned specifically that the Giants' best plays seem to be off schedule breakdowns in the play. And I agree with you on that it wasn't a design play, but it was something that Dart did on his own when the play broke down.
Yeah.
So that combined, and the fourth thing being the Daniel Jones now going on to do his thing. I think all those things sort of combined, and long story short, before you came on, you are what your record says you are. He won 20 games here. 9 of them came in the first year. 6 came in the second year, and he's won 5 games in the last 2 years. So, I mean, he had 4 years.
Yeah, it's a performance business, and a lot of things around him, not all, a lot of things around him did get better. A lot of that roster did improve, and it wasn't all Joe Shane. Some of that was, dare I say, Dave Gettleman, but the result never improved with the situation getting around it. And it looks like, I know, John, you have said this a few times, a bounce of the ball here, a bounce of the ball there. You know, the Giants are a 500 team, or last year they're in playoff contention. And I feel like the more you say that margin that is small, it comes down to coaching.
Yes.
Execution, penalties. I mean, they're one of the most penalized teams in NFL. That is, to me, an indictment of coaching. Late game collapses, bad decisions with points, field goals, extra points, 2-point conversions. And I like breaking it down like that, Eric, that there was really 4 areas of why he was. And I like what you said, because I completely agree. And now it's just all about moving forward.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing with what you just said, I was thinking about this probably 45 minutes before we were going to start. The woulda, coulda, shoulda has come up, right? You just brought it up that I've mentioned that there were specific things, but there are different woulda, coulda, and then woulda, coulda, shoulda. Woulda, coulda is what we kept saying for 2023, right? The Bills game, the Jets game, they easily could have won those games. It was close. They played kind of stupid at the end, or got a bad call. It was close games. They could have won those. But again, you were never really winning those games. You were in those games, but you weren't winning those games. Then there was last year. We talked about the Cowboys game, right? It was man, it's if we just had competent quarterback play against Dallas at home, Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati scored 17 points, but really it was a 10-7 game for quite a while. We gave up 1 long rushing touchdown to Joe would have turned things around. This year's woulda, coulda is drastically different. You've got double-digit leads in games. You're making choices that are literally costing you. It's your stupid choices that are costing you what's happening. And I thought that was really, you were holding on to this piece before, right? That was your, hey, just get me my guy. Okay, that bought you a little bit of time. But this year, that was the thing that nailed you. That was the part that said, you're the reason that your team, because look across the landscape of the NFL. Dallas has 3 wins. Washington has 3 wins. There's so many teams that are bad. The Giants at 2 wins actually make the 3-win teams look like we're envious of where they're sitting. That's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah, that's well said. I agree.
And the only other thing I'll throw in there too is, this just popped in my mind. This regime and I throw Joe Shane into this, by the way, simply cannot seem to learn from their mistakes. Look how they lose to Dallas, and they do the same damn thing in the Denver game. And then I don't even get me started on the kicking situation. I mean, the kicking situation is unbelievable. It's not just been this year; it's been previous years, and it keeps happening. So at some point, again, before you came on, I said this is not a day to celebrate, because this is just another indictment of the team has been poorly run, and now once again we're firing a coach, and we're going to have to pray to God that they picked the right guy here. But they did it to themselves too. I mean, it's a bottom line business. They were given the groceries that they wanted, and they haven't delivered. And in a way, they're fortunate he got another year here. So that's my last comment on this.
Yeah, I'll wrap it up by saying, should this have been done last year? I do think we debated it you could have made an argument in both directions. I remember talking with you guys that if they draft a quarterback, it's going to buy him an extra season unless the wheels fall off, and they did. But I hate to say, especially what's going on with ownership right now with Mara, but I believe that is the one thing, that's the one constant that has been here through one of the worst runs in franchise history. And at some point, at what point can ownership look in the mirror and be like, we need to change our structure here? Whether it's people that work for the team in the front office that are making scouting decisions that are from the family that are basically not fireable, even though everyone else has been fireable? Or is it you bring in a guy that will run all of football operations and ownership takes a complete step back and just let someone come in that's been doing this a long time and really just start from scratch with a little bit of a head start with the rookie quarterback and Jaxson Dart and Andrew Thomas and players that can be a definite part of the solution. But this to me feels like the most important coaching search they've ever had. Maybe because of the fact that they have the quarterback already. It's there. They are they are a coach away from being the next contender in the NFC East.
I see. That's the part that I totally am on board with. I think too many folks get hung up on the Mara portion of it and some other things. Not saying it's not true, but I think the focus becomes, it's this, and this is the reason why. Okay, that might be true, that might not be true, but tell me any other team in the league right now that has, family ownership of a team that's been there for a while that's not involved. The Joneses are involved. Harris brings in all his guys. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
What bothers me though is we've gone and got players that are well thought of in the league. Paulson Daboll, Javon Holland, Burns we got, but Burns is really paying off, but he is Rex Ryan had something, and I don't normally like Rex Ryan, but he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, you have a lot of talent on defense, but defense is about being a unit. He goes, and I see a bunch of individuals out there playing kind of individual football. He goes, where's Dexter Lawrence doing his thing? Sure, you're getting double teamed, but where are you in the team concept? Where are you coming through? He goes, Burns is the guy, he could lead the league in sacks, yet he's still kind of by himself. Where is this vaunted pass rush? Where are these guys? Where is the defensive backs? You spent a ton of money. At some point, you can't blame the people that brought them in because these guys were talented elsewhere. Why are they not talented here? So either you have a mismatch that's just incorrect, and then that is your fault that you got great pieces, right? Like I got all these pieces to to build a car. The problem is they're like for 55 different cars, So, yeah. Or it is the people that are running the day to day, and I really believe at this point, the game day part of it is far worse. The only thing I will say on the Shane side that works against him, you brought some players in, and that's fine. Some fail, some don't, and that always happens with the draft. But Gano is a perfect example. You've got a problem. The guy's an aging kicker on a bad team, and he's got a big contract. So now you had to go get multiple kickers where we're paying money for. We go and get all these other offensive linemen because you've got failed offensive linemen that you drafted, but they're still on the team. Like, why do you still carry them if you've got to replace them? So that's the part that I think his inability to admit and move on from mistakes. And I think his managing of if he's the one doing it all, I don't know if he does, but the managing of the cap has been probably one of his biggest failures too.
Yeah. I agree. They're not in the best cap situation right now moving forward. It's not a bad situation, but they're not flush with cash. Like the kind of offseason that the Patriots and the Chicago Bears have had over the past year to 2 years to support their rookie quarterback. The Giants are not going to be able to do that. It's going to be a slightly different situation there. So I think that the number one thing to talk about, I mean, this is your podcast, this is your show. The one thing I'm most intrigued by, what profile of coach do you guys want that's next?
That's interesting. I was just going to ask you.
Like right now, like I'm organizing this list by profile, like former coach that's no longer coaching, example McCarthy, right? Who I'm not in on, but that's my example of that.
Sure.
College coach, Lane Kiffin, come back, work Jaxson Dart. That has not worked in the NFL. That rarely ever works, by the way. The next young whiz kid, a 37-year-old coordinator that has never been a head coach. Can you find that next McVay, O'Connell, Shanahan type? And then go down the path. Do you want defensive minded? Do you want offensive minded?
Right.
That's how you want to organize this thought process. And, do you open up the door to Brian Flores again after all that dramatic situation? That's, does John Gruden, does he have too much? Does John Gruden have too much drama around his past that happened 15 years ago? But is that enough for the Mariners to be like, no, we don't want that negative PR? Belichick, it's funny. I proposed, I don't know how serious I was about it, but would he ever come back as a D coordinator and just say like, hey, I'm not the head coach. I'm not going to be the GM. I'm not going to be in charge of the roster, and I'm not bringing the girlfriend. Then we could.
He's lost his mind. He's lost.
Is that kind of not even in the strategy? I mean, they love each other. The Giants love Belichick. The Belichick loves him. But I like the idea of the young whiz kid, next up and coming offensive coordinator, which I don't think the Giants have ever done. I'm talking like 38-year-old Clint Kubiak type, or Mike LaFleur, someone from that Sean McVay coaching tree that has.
Wasn't that what Pat Shurmur was supposed to be? I mean,
well, he wasn't young up and coming. He'd already had a head coaching job before.
Yeah, he had a head coach job,
and it wasn't a good one. He was a failed head coach.
McAdoo
could definitely be an example of that. Absolutely,
but he was in house already though.
Yep. Do you think they're looking at Mike Kafka as a possibility?
I don't.
Do you think they're looking at Mike Kafka as a possibility?
I wouldn't discount it. I don't know. Look, I don't know what they're going to do, but I think John and I talked about this last time. They seem to, if you believe the news stories the last few years, they seem to very much respect the opinion of Bill Belichick in that coaching tree. And that coaching, John and I talked about, that coaching tree has not panned out very well in many places. Some places, yes. Other places, no. Vrabel panned out, but a lot of those guys flamed out.
But he wasn't. But he wasn't on the coaching staff with Belichick. He just played for him.
No, that's true. So, But I can still kind of consider him part of that
sure.
universe, if you will. I think what I'm a little bit afraid of is I hope they just don't limit themselves to talking to Bill, because I assume Bill put in a good word, obviously, for Joe Judge. He probably put in a really good word for Brian Daboll. I'm been very much impressed by the way the San Francisco tree has panned out. I hope they look sort of at the San Francisco tree. It's a great question, size, in terms of John and I have talked about this before. In this sense, is they have gotten burned a little bit here by going for the new guy that doesn't have a lot of head coaching experience. So a knee-jerk reaction now by Mara to say, almost go back to like what his dad did when he brought in Dan Reeves and say, you know what, I'm going to play it safe now. So I am going to get a McCarthy because I know there's a floor here, and I cannot go below that floor again. I just can't accept it. And playing it safe may be the right thing. It may be the wrong thing, but I have a sneaky suspicion that they may be a little bit wary about going for the hot offensive-minded coach that I would not shy away from, but I think they may. That's my reaction.
Okay, John, what do you think?
Yeah, so real quick, a secret agent Randy Beans put out, would you trade draft capital for a head coach like Tomlin? I think you would have to consider something like that if it was even possible. Mike Tomlin would be an organizational change agent, really. I mean, he would change everything about the way this team is perceived, the players. You would get a different buy-in. I just don't see the Giants offering up capital. And to work it out with Pittsburgh would have to be the one to come and knocking and saying, hey, listen, if you're interested, we would be willing to let Tomlin go. Giants aren't going to go asking them. That family connection, they're not going to do that. As far as the young and up and coming, I think Mara might shy away from it. The question will be, what does Shane want to do? Because Shane just, to me, always just seems like he's acts like he's got it all figured out, but I don't know that he has a whole lot of connections in the coaching world that people would want to come running to him. I mean, they literally pulled Daboll because of the Buffalo connection, but I don't know that Shane's got these other guys just lining up wanting to work with him because he's young, right?
Yep.
Like it's not like he's had a ton of, 15, 20 years of a GM experience and he's got these coaches underneath him that are like, hey, I want to come to you.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm all in with LaFleur. I'm all in with Chris Shula, who's my bigger of the two choices. I'd like to get Chris Shula over here. I want a defensive coach, and then get yourself an offensive whiz kid. Maybe somebody else who's already on that Ram staff as well. Bring over Ragone as if you want. Look at what they've done with the Rams, and I want to get back to the Rams afterwards with you. But I mean, what your thoughts? I mean, you've covered, you've seen, the Giants. I mean, do you think they would be willing to risk it after what they did? And the other thing I'll say real quick too is if Brown stays, so if you have Shane and you have Brown stays, I really hope that they don't entertain talking to Doug Peterson.
Yeah, I think that ship has sailed with him. I think McCarthy's done. I think Peterson's done. Bill Cowher, that name always comes up. I think he's. But here's head coaches. If you go look at what teams have done, especially teams that can't find the guy, right? They're changing coaches every 3, 4, 5 years. It's similar to like elections where it's pretty much going to be the other path if you've gone down the same path 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. And the past 2 paths this organization has gone down is the young assistant coach that doesn't have the experience. Joe Judge, Brian Daboll. And then you had Shermer, who's kind of like a mix, and then you had McAdoo. They've went the young guy route multiple times, and it hasn't worked. Mm-hmm. I still think that's the biggest swing for the fence. And I'm big on – I'm not trying to – if this was my decision, I'm not trying to get to 8 wins. Like, you take that job, the first interview says, like, my goal is to win the Super Bowl next year, right now. And you're in the prime. You at the rookie quarterback contract. Like, this is the time to do it. And I say you take the swing for the fence, but I lean towards them going the safe route. That's what this organization is probably going to do after 2 fails with Joe Judge and Brian Daboll. And McCarthy, I think he's out. Peterson, he's out. I don't know if you guys have any information or give me your opinion on what John Gruden would be as a head coach here. Like, do you think A, ownership would go for it, and B, because of what happened, how he got fired, why he lost his job in Las Vegas, the PR behind that, and do you think that is a more likely path for them to take?
I think Gruden is a non-discussion point. John Mara is tried and true NFL. He is part of the competition committee, I believe. He's one of the lead owners. There's no way that he's going to step outside the NFL lines and bring and entertain Gruden with his lawsuit and everything else. Not going to happen. He's not even going to be a consideration, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think if the Giants go the young route again, in a way, it would impress me in this sense, Cy, that they aren't afraid to swing for the fences. But I, like you, because I mentioned it first too, I think they're gonna play it safe. But if they don't play it safe, in a way, I'm going to be kind of applauding them for at least trying to hit the home run here. So I'm going to be very interested to see who they bring in. And I know John's not on board to this because of his failed run with the Rams, but I wonder if the connection with Steve Spagnuolo is still there with the family. And I've said this repeatedly. When I watch Kansas City, I'm so impressed with the way their defense is coached. Yeah. So if they do go a defensive route, I could see Spags being at least interviewed to come here. Whether they would go that way, I don't know. Mm-hmm. The other question that ties into this is when before Shane and Daboll, they were always reluctant to sort of go outside their own circle, that circle that were, and do they now sort of retreat to that and just go to that circle again? Or are they still willing to expand and look out at, again, when I watch certain offenses, and they're so creative, and it's not just the talent. It's what you've mentioned in your game reviews. Where's the creativity? If we're going to lose, let's at least make it interesting. So when I watch some of these teams, I'm like, wow, that is a neat play.
Yep.
I would like to see some of that with the Giants.
I saw more of it. I mean, I'm still working on the game review from yesterday, and so many different plays. Third and got to have it. Fourth and got to have it. Just nothing. Sending 3 guys out into 5 guys with coverage. Very simple routes, long developing routes, vertical, like hitches back and forth. Just very stuff that is easy to defend. And that's always been my biggest gripe. Giants offense and defense, they're easy to play against. It's predictable. And I saw Justin Pugh today on X was talking about Ryan Daboll is an excellent X and O's guy. And I don't even know what that means. And I'm not a coach. I'm not in the NFL. I don't really care. The other 75% of football, he's not a good head coach at. So I don't really care if you're good at X's and O's. I don't see it. If anything, this would be the time to get more creative. They have no talent. They lost Malik Neighbors. They lost Cam Scatterbo. Be more creative. The Niners are doing it. The name that I think is a young whiz kid that has ties to Joe Shane and his crew is also from Buffalo, and he's also going to be mentioned. It's Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, 36 years old, and many people think he's eventually going to be a head coach. He's kind of like a Cliff Kingsbury type profile, and that would be the kind of profile you're talking about, Eric. If you're going to go for the swing for the fence, that is in Joe Shane's corner, because they don't like going outside. Even the guys they grab off practice squads are from Buffalo, and that's one thing I've noticed about Joe Shane. He follows a very similar template to what Brandon Beane does in Buffalo, and there's a lot of similarities there. So
can you imagine the reaction from many Giants fan if they get another offensive coordinator from Buffalo? I mean, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just, the knee-jerk reaction is going to be like, Jesus Christ, it'd be like me. I've got PT, whatever.
Yep, there you go. PT. Yep, I got you.
With Alabama linemen now. So when I don't want to even look at Caden Proctor, because that would have nailed it to me.
Yeah.
So, so besides him, I know you're looking at and you write. One of the great things, and I do want to give you a plug with this. Those of you out there who have not been reading Cy's game reviews because the Giants have been losing, they're top notch still. Cy is a professional, and if you read these, you will get good and bad information. I mean, good news and bad news from the Giants team, but it's outstanding. And as at the end, he always has stuff on what he would do if he was the Giants, and players and coaches he would look on at the other team. So I know Cy looks at this. Are there a couple other names early? I know it's early, that you would be like, man, I would really hope the Giants would interview the guy at least.
Yeah, so I mentioned the two. I mean, Clint Kubiak is the guy that I think he's probably the top swing for the fence offensive young-minded guy. I'm not in on Cliff Kingsbury, but I do think he would get a phone call just because of his early success with Jaden Daniels. This year's a wash because of the injuries. There's a defensive guy that I did talk about in a game review, not in regard to the Giants, because this was after they beat the Chargers. So things were a little bit more optimistic back then, but I said, this guy's going to be head coach, and it's Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator. If you want a defensive young whiz kid who's working under Harbaugh right now in Los Angeles, and doing a really good job. He was with him at Michigan as well. Jesse Minter is a guy that if you want to go the defensive route, I would talk to. The risk of defensive-minded guy, and you said this, Eric, get a defensive, or John, get a defensive guy, hire a young whiz kid for the offense. The problem with that on the offensive coordinator side is those guys usually get hired pretty quick if they do a good job. And that could be damning to a Jaxson Dart, that he has this young offensive coordinator that's up and coming. They do a great job. They hit it off for 2 years, and then someone goes out and hires him, where if you swing for the fence for an offensive-minded guy and they succeed, he's not going anywhere. He'll be here. He could be the next Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes type relationship where they just get old together. And Chris Shula is another one from the Los Angeles Rams. I'm big on that tree. That's my favorite tree.
Yep.
Aubrey Pleasant, I think, is the assistant head coach, pass game coordinator. And this is where I do get into, and I'll be criticized for this, and I'll own it. I do get into the leader of men type mentality. I do think intangibles matter. I think I think the right personality at head coach can both scare NFL players inspire them, and be their buddy. From my vantage point, it seemed to me Brian Daboll tried too hard to be their buddy.
Yeah.
Joe Judge tried too hard to be Bill Belichick.
Yep.
There is a personable, interpersonal communication skill set that can do both. That I'm the head coach, that your typical old school, you are afraid of me. All right, I got your back, but I'm going to get the most out of you. And that's what everyone's goal should be at the end of the day. I think Aubrey Pleasant is a guy from the Los Angeles Rams that I would look into in that regard.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. That's the way you were talking about with Justin. And you, by the way, the percentage you used was 60%. I saw your response to him. We kept seeing over and over again from national pundits, bro, Brian Daboll's so smart. He's such a great offensive mind. And again, I'm waiting for it. And I thought, well, it must have been Daniel Jones holding him back. And then of course we see what happened now. But it gets back to what you said, that other 60%, so much of it is, it's not just this, but so much of it is you've got to lead that locker room. You've got to be able to command that locker room, earn the respect of those players, but also place a little bit of fear of God in them at the same time. It's a delicate balancing act, especially in today's NFL. But you've got to scare these guys a little bit right now. Like the defensive players right now in the Giants, I don't think they're that scared. I don't think they're worried about.
Why would you, right?
Yeah.
Why would you when you got a Deonte Banks who can continually just half-ass it? They know it. They see it. Come on. He can half-ass it. He can be poor in everything he does. And you keep putting him out there because he was a first-round pick. And, yeah, you got injuries. I don't care. Do you think Bill Parcells would have kept putting the corner? He would have gone and said, listen, I don't care. Who do we have? Sheldon White, you got to get out there. You just go. I don't give a shit who's doing it. You get out there and play. Elvis Patterson, you're off the field. They just keep putting Deonte Banks back out there, and it permeates everything else that you do. The one thing I will say, and I don't want to. First off, I'm totally on board with what you said, Si, but every now and then I got to take the other side of it real quick.
Let's go, baby. I love it.
In your example, though, Brian Daboll was the hotshot offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills who got the job with the New York Giants, and Joe Brady is the guy who's made that team better. So there is a point, and now of course I think in the meantime Dorsey was in between before Brady took over, so there is that. But there is the possibility. But I'm on board with you. I'm fine with whoever you ultimately get, but I like the tree idea. Now, the one piece that you can't control that I'm all on board with, so I'm curious if you've even given any thought to this. I like that Rams thing a little bit deeper than just the assistant coaches. I would like the Giants to go out of their normal path, reach out to Tony Pastors and say, we want you to come over as president and GM. Come over here. He runs a lot of the contract pieces. He handles a lot of the pro player personnel stuff over there with the Rams. He's huge with Les Snead. Those guys work together. Bring him over here and then let him bring Shula or LaFleur, either one. If it's LaFleur, then you bring Pleasant over as the D coordinator. I'd like to get Chase Blackburn back, make him the assistant head coach, special teams guy, if you want that connection, and then fill however you want to fill it. Yeah. Or you do the other way. It's Chris Shula, and then you bring over a Dave Ragone. Maybe you bring over one of their assistant offensive line coaches. You bring over just so you have more, so those guys are used to working together, and then go from there. The thing that you said about what worries me about the Giants is they hire coaches very similar, because we've had a lot of experience recently, very similar to the way they draft. They wait until there's an obvious and perceptible need, and then they go, oh, we got to go get that guy. Case in point, Tom Coughlin goes, they go in a different direction, but they stayed in-house. They bring in Ben McAdoo. What did they do next time? When they got away from McAdoo, they brought in Gettleman as the GM because the team was out of control, right? Eric Flowers, Apple, all those guys. They were just piss poor players and attitude and whatever. Gettleman comes in, and what does he say? We're going to get an adult. We're going to have an adult in the room as head coach. You can go back and see when he said that. So they bring in milquetoast Pat Shurmur. You know, a guy who's going to be, he's not going to be flamboyant. He's not going to be with the players. He's going to be the level-headed adult. Well, that failed. So then they go, we're going to get the authoritative guy. We're going to bring in a Joe Judge, a Bill Belichick disciple, because the team continued to be, they're soft. They're not aggressive. We're not this. So we get this guy who clearly didn't know what he was doing as a head coach and tried to be somebody else. So then they went and we got rid of both. For the first time, they cleared out both GM and coach at the same time. And we get the two guys that work together. But Daboll's biggest thing, I think, from day one, he had an ego like there was no tomorrow. And when he had early success, that showed through way too much from there. And B, he's so tied to the players, and it showed. Go look at the Bears game from this past weekend. Darius Slayton finally makes a catch, and it was a great catch. Brian Daboll, you would have thought that he just witnessed Odell Beckham making the one-handed catch in the end zone. He was jumping off the sidelines. His headset went flying. He's slapping Slayton, and I'm like, that was just a first down, right? Like we didn't even score on that play. But that's the kind of behavior that, to me, he likes the rah part of that piece of it. And now you've got to look in a different direction. And I like your thought, and I know it can come off sort of, I guess, in a world where you have to, tamp down some things, you want to come off a little manly, but we need an actual man to be a head coach. He doesn't have to be older. It just needs somebody who commands the room, but not just in words like, hey, let me draw something on the board and I'll show how superior I am by going, show me the X, show me the Y, show me the H. I was like, you only have 4 out there, right? You already had him label 3. If he doesn't know what the 4th one is, you've got a moron at the board. That was really stupid. So you want a guy, though, that's going to come in and players want to play for that guy. Other coaches don't want to fail that guy versus a country club attitude of we're all kind of together and whatever. And that's where I think I'm looking. The question for you is, does it matter that the Giants have made multiple changes and the GM stays on which of those two? An older experienced guy because we're using a guy who's already the GM, or does it make more sense to go with a younger guy so the GM commands more control of the situation?
Yeah. So if you're the GM, what would you rather have? Would you rather have the more established celebrity of the pair because he's had success and he's older than you and maybe he's got more connections to the league than you? Or do you want to go for the young whiz kid partially because you'll feel like you have a little bit more power over him? It's a good question. And I feel that only Joe Schoen or the people that know him really well personally would be able to answer that. And I don't know much on Joe Schoen. I don't know what his personality is like, and I'm not going to pretend to. So I'm saying from my perspective, I do think Joe Schoen is more modern thinking. I would say that.
Okay.
He was not using the binder for the NFL draft prospects, right?
right. He opens his Ourlads guide. He's like,
but so because of that, I do think he will lean more towards youth. And I do think that he would lean more towards someone that I don't think age is the factor, but more like, hey, we're going to kind of run this back and try this again. We tried it with Brian Daboll. He simply was not the right guy. I don't think it was the wrong idea. I think it was the wrong guy. Right. We got to see Brian Daboll's personality more and more as the years transpired, both good and bad. And the more you watch, the more you listen to, the more he didn't say, the more repetitive he got, how he carried himself with Daniel Jones, and then how he even carried himself with Malik Neighbors and Jaxson Dart, the feet on the desk thing that still bothers me.
Yep.
It just wasn't the right guy. And it is rare to find someone that's young, quote young, but also professional and will scare you and will intimidate you, but also can relate to these players. You hear that more and more. I don't really jive with it, but you do hear it more and more in all sports that these coaches need to be able to relate to these kids that are coming out because they have so much power now. They have so much clout coming out of college with the NIL. They're millionaires, right, but before they get to the NFL, you're no longer, signing their paycheck, if you will. They're already millionaires. So it's almost like you have to make that personal relationship, that connection, I should say, a little bit more likely. So that adds another curveball to the situation from Joe Schoen's perspective. Is it age, experience, but also what kind of personality is this? What are we getting?
Well, my big question is Joe Schoen, how much influence is Joe Schoen going to have on this decision? I mean, who's making ultimately the ownership's going to make the decision. Are they going to listen? How much are they going to listen to Joe Schoen? You would hope a lot, but I don't know. Does Chris Mara have more say with John than Joe Schoen? I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, so I would think this is the part where I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we've already seen what influence he does have. If it were in, okay, let me ask you, I'll ask both of you this. If it were in John Mayer's wheelhouse, solely his decision, would Saquon Barkley still be with this team?
Yes.
Okay. I agree. I think so too. I think he relied on Joe Shane, and it put Joe Shane in a bad position. It made him look bad because of the way that was shown. But I'm 100% on board with that. You needed to move on from Saquon Barkley. The problem
I'm not sure Joe Barkley would have been here the year before had Mara not intervened.
I agree. Yeah. I was going to say that. I would have moved on from him sooner.
Yeah.
The draft is kind of the same thing, though, right? I think Joe Shane has the one good quality about him. It doesn't mean he picks the best players. Okay. And none of us, we all had different players that we thought were going to be different guys. And Dart has really surprised. So that being said, he seems to have a really good handle on how the draft will go with other teams, where people are kind of slotted to go. He really laid it out in the neighbors draft. And looking back on it, maybe he made the right choice of not going to McCarthy. Knicks, I don't know that would have been the same with the Giants as he is with Sean Payton. Then you look at just kind of the way they handled this past draft. If Daboll had his choice, and that's not necessarily wrong, but it is retroactive justification because we've seen the fact that Dart's played well. You could go, oh, Daboll was right. You should have taken Dart third. That's kind of putting this over here because you have results over here to prove that. But you didn't know that at the time. Abdul Carter was by far the top prospect coming out as far as outside of Cam Ward if you needed a quarterback. You could go Carter Hunter, depending on who you really wanted. That was the next guy. The Giants got him and they got Dart, and they didn't give up a lot to do it. So I think Shane, that way, he does carry a lot of influence. Now, the coaching piece is different because we have not seen a coaching search with a GM that we thought was making the decision by himself in a while.
Well, I'll also counter and remind you that Shane traded up for Deontay Banks and Jalen Hyatt, too. So... That's stuff out there. I don't want to keep Cy on too long, and I want to ask Cy this. The Giants are going to draft a lot higher than we thought they were going to draft. As a layperson looking at the draft now, it's not, to me, as an outsider, and if I'm wrong on this, you tell me I'm wrong.
Yep.
This draft isn't going the way I expected it to look like when the season started. The quarterbacks are all over the place. And right now, some of the players that we thought were going to be top prospects haven't been terrible, but they're not playing at the level that we thought they might. That defensive tackle from Clemson, Woods isn't, they're players there. I wanted to get your thoughts, Cy. If you're picking top five, and you can't trade down. You want to trade down. You say there's a quarterback that somebody wants and you want it, and you don't need the quarterback and you want to get capital, but say that's off the table.
Yep.
Who are you taking if you're the Giants right now? I've seen your Twitter feed, so I have an idea, but who, I mean, if say the Giants are picking third or four, and they don't need a quarterback, they try to trade down and they can't. Who's on your short list right there? Like, say, third or fourth pick in the draft.
This would not be on my short list, but the funny thing here would be there would have to be a discussion about Jeremiah Love going down the path of a high running back again. I have a few guys that I would take above him, but it's funny, after all these years, you'd come back to that very similar situation. But it's a great question. I've talked about this with a few others in the business. Everyone agrees the top 10 in this draft just ain't good. It's just not.
Yeah.
Like, there are probably two guys in this draft that I'd be like, yeah, that's a top 10 dude. Two.
Who?
And
well, who are your top two guys?
Ruben Bain, the DN from Miami.
Right.
Unique player. I don't think he's a shoo-in yet. I need to see some of a few more measurements there and see him test a little bit, but I love his tape, and I think he could take over games. He's taken over games multiple times. And I also like Caleb Downs from Ohio State. Just as I had Brian Branch, Cooper DeJean, and Kyle Hamilton all graded at the same exact number. They're in different draft classes. They all fell draft weekend because of the position they played, and they're all very good, important players on good defenses. So would I draft them that high? I don't know. In this situation, I do think the Giants could use a safety. But the name I come back to is Carnell Tate from Ohio State, the wide receiver. I think he is a T. Higgins level of reliability on a team that has a Jamar Chase already.
So is he your wide receiver 1 right now?
Right now he is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
He's above Tyson from Arizona State.
I know you like Makai Lemon. I've seen you've been like tweeting out a lot about Makai Lemon, but he's smaller, obviously.
He's a little smaller. I do love his tape. I love his play. He was top 15 for me entering the year overall. He's probably close to like the 10 range. I need to see. I don't know if he's fast enough to be like a true downfield threat, yard after catch type. But that to me, it's a really. I mean, my answer was going to be I'd like to try to trade down to a team that needs a quarterback.
Well, who's trading up in its top 10 of this draft?
Well, yeah, but see, a couple things. A, you still have to figure out who's actually going to be there. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, we don't know who the Giants coach is, so we don't know what they might be trying to go do. If it's a defensive coach, there might be a whole different thing, because if they change the way they play defense, if we no longer play this, whatever the hell you want to call it, that we keep running out there, and let's say magically if they got Mike Tomlin, we're playing more a traditional 3-4, and that's a whole different ball game. So I'm not too worried about that. But trades, usually when you're way up top, people think of the blockbuster. The Giants should have, in the Barkley draft, should have moved down just 2 spots. They should have flipped with the Colts. They should have just moved down. They could have gotten Quentin Nelson at 4, and it's not a sexy pick, but they would have picked up a few extra picks. You're not going to get a haul, it sounds like, unless a couple other quarterbacks really stand out and a couple other teams flame out and need a quarterback and want to come up and get him. Or you take a trade that drops you much further down than what you normally would in that position, and you take a little less in this draft and more in the next draft. Yeah. So there's ways of doing it. I think it's too early to speculate. I would trade down. I would instantly trade down.
Well, yeah, I'm just throwing that at that. There's like
sure.
mentioned earlier. The question is who should. So you basically kind of went in the direction that my mind is kind of going right now. Is that we might be in a position where the best player on the board might be the player doesn't have positional value at that spot. The safety downs, the running back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tate is a good player, but if you were talking about top 5 with him, I think people would have thought that was too rich. But they may be in a position where you say, you know what? I'm going to just take the player that I know is going to be really good. I don't care about the positional value argument at this point.
And it can give you some identity. I use that word, maybe I overused a little bit, but you get a 1-2 punch at wide receiver. Malik Neighbors, Carnell Tate. You have a couple other accessory options and a solid offensive line that can give you an identity on the offensive side of the ball with a young quarterback. That could really be a lot of fun to watch. There is a wild card name, though, that we're not going to hear anything about until the pre-draft process. It's the corner from Tennessee. It's Jermon McCoy. To this day, he still is my number 1 corner. And if you're number 1 corner, you're in the top 10 discussion. And I don't know if cornerback is the sexiest position for the Giants in the draft, but they could use a real solid number 1 corner if you feel like he can grade out. His is going to be a lot of speculation. I don't know if the Giants are in a position to make a pick like that because he's not playing here in 2025. He tore his ACL last January. He will be healthy before the combine. We'll get measurements. But I watched, again, last week, I watched his tape from 2024. It's better than any corner in this draft. So it's a risky pick, but that is a wild card name at a position of value that the Giants, in my opinion, need. I think they need a solid number 1 corner.
Has anyone ever taken a player that high coming off an ACL? I can't remember in the first round. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the other thing too is, again, the PTSD. Giants fans with corners lately. Again, I know you can't think like that, but my goodness, we have a train wreck with drafting corners in this franchise in the last decade.
I agree. I would lean Tate in that. Like if the draft was right now, without doing all the background, all the work that we do for the scouting reports, my pick would be Tate right now.
Yeah, I would be. I just wish we weren't picking. I wish we could, like John said. I hope we can trade down. But you got to have somebody willing to trade up with them. Real quick, just out of curiosity, we don't need them, but because we're thinking about in terms of trade up, trade down, who do you think quarterback wise teams might be putting as in the QB1 or QB2 in this class? Everything seems to be jumbled right now. And
So
guys
cool.
that we weren't thinking about are now rising, and guys that were supposed to be up there are now dropping. And I don't know who you've got there. So
the players that I think right now are playing good enough to be considered a guy that I'm going to start year one if we need to, or he's going to carry my franchise. And if that's the answer, if the answer is yes to that question, you take him anywhere in the first round, including number 1 overall.
right.
The guy is Ty Simpson from Alabama, but Fernando Mendoza, I feel a shift right now. This is probably a time for a discussion for another time. But watching Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Sam Darnold turn it around, Daniel Jones turn it around, I think a lot of teams are going to want to lean towards not going for the home run Lamar Jackson draft pick, a.k.a. Anthony Richardson, and take the guy that plays clean. He knows where to go with the football. He gets it out on time. And that right now, when I watch the tape, Fernando Mendoza from Indiana is that guy. I don't love his talent. I don't love his upside, but he knows where to go with the football. He's fairly accurate, and he's tough. He's tough as nails. So he doesn't shy from contact. He did not play well at Penn State this past Saturday, but he did rise to the occasion in a really big moment on the road against 102,000 raging fans.
Right.
So I would say those two guys. Ty Simpson, to me, I get very nervous about guys that have not started 12 games. I would say not started 25 games, let alone he hasn't started 12 yet. Ty Simpson. The fact that he's in this discussion, to me, has more to do with the class has been performing very poorly this year. And I recently just told someone that I could see this being 2022, where you don't see a quarterback going in the top 20 picks.
That's always my next question for you, John. I've been monopolizing the question.
No, you're fine. No, we'll keep it tight because we're gonna keep it tight for tonight anyway. But real quick, why is that, Si? Why has the quarterback piece? I mean, guys like Beck have fallen off, Nussmeier. I mean, that whole thing is like everybody that was supposed like. I remember when we talked in the spring, right? We were doing the draft coverage. People are like, "Oh, you don't have 26 is going to be so much better." And I kept going, "How do you know that?" Like,
I thought so.
And it's really proven now. Like some of the guys you're counting on are just off the radar.
Well, thank God we got Dart. In hindsight, thank God we got Dart.
I was one of the guys that said I think the 2026 quarterbacks were going to be better than this past year. And macro level, I mean, if Dart ends up being the guy, that will definitely take the cake. But let's not act like the 2025 class was very strong. It wasn't.
Oh,
right.
It really wasn't. Cam Ward was number 1 pick because there wasn't anyone else. We saw the fall of Shedeur Sanders, and so I think if you had to say why are these quarterbacks not playing that well, this can center you back to a lot of the quarterbacks that we liked last year only had 12 starts under their belt. And that's just, it's not enough. I hate saying that, but you got to watch these guys for 20 to 25 games in college at least to really be like, all right, now I have a really good feeling for this. And even then you might not be right, but I have a good feel for what this guy is going to be.
Sure.
But a guy like Garrett Nussmeier, who I loved last year, I was very vocal about that. He was just making unbelievable NFL caliber throws with anticipation over and over, left and right every week. Now he looks like a disaster. Yes, the offensive line is bad, dumpster fire situation at LSU, but his play is bad too. I mean, his footwork is a disaster. His hesitation, his lack of anticipation, and these are human beings. They're kids as well. That I'm not going to try to dive into the psychology of why it happens, but I will say this is why you wait for the games to make a final eval.
Well, I had never seen Archie Manning play until this year, and I had only watched the first few games of this year. So maybe he's gotten dramatically better. But my goodness, I was like, what? What's the hype with this guy? Me, I'm not coming out this year.
Yeah,
I don't know how, if the rumors are he's staying in, but if I'm Archie, I'm not coming out.
Yeah, I'm not coming out. Dante Moore from Oregon, it sounds like he's not coming out as well. Sounds like that's like something that's very well known in the Oregon circles, that it kind of made its way out. So again, I mean, I like the kid from USC, but I don't think he's ready. I like the kid from Duke. I don't think he's ready.
Sorry. Speaking of PTSD, we think you bring a Duke quarterback here.
I have an idea. Let's draft the tackle from Alabama with the first pick and the quarterback from Duke with the second pick.
Is there a wide receiver from Tennessee? Let's go
There
3.
are a couple. There are a couple actually, and they're very I think he's a deep threat, and that's it. But we'll see.
So nice. So one thing, real quick, last thing I wanted to ask you, very specifically about the Daboll and the Giants and all that stuff. We had heard Eric brought it up last year in the fall, so we discussed it, but we didn't say who it was at the time. The Giants were interested in a veteran quarterback, which we knew was Matthew Stafford. That became Matthew Stafford at the end of the season into the offseason. They also had an interest in Aaron Rodgers in the offseason. We ultimately get Winston and Wilson. Then they draft Dart. But when you see Brian Daboll's offense, and the more that I've paid attention to it over the 4 years that he's been here, so much of this offense is, and the reason I think it failed with Daniel Jones is it's not just what do you do when you're off schedule. It's almost counting on that you're going to make something happen off schedule with your athletic ability. So it's not like it was schemed that way. It's that his athletic ability makes these things work, and we're giving credit to this. So what the hell would you have done with a fairly immobile Matthew Stafford, with a I'm even older than Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, and even with Winston and Wilson, which I think if Dart can't play, you almost have to play Winston because Wilson's so bad. But half of your offense is going to be eliminated with Winston being the quarterback.
Yeah, I agree with you. On spoiler alert, part of my review is going to be Winston's got to be the quarterback next week. It's not even a debate in my head, but I agree.
I think everyone agrees with you.
Yeah, I mean he's stiffer than cardboard. Like he's not going to be able to create much with his legs. I even think he's stiffer than Russell Wilson, who now when I'm watching Russell Wilson on the All-22 right after Dart in the same environment, night and day. The level of athletic ability. Like Russell Wilson's a lot worse than I thought when it comes to just speed, quickness, twitch. But I believe that the plan for Stafford, I would say, is that the way he's playing right now, guys, I think he's playing the best quarterback in the NFL this year. I don't think there's anyone playing the position better than him. So that might have just been like, hey, just get the guy in here. We'll figure it out. Rodgers, to me, was just plan B when Russell Wilson was plan C. I don't think the result would have been very different with Rodgers here than Wilson. I believe that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Daboll certainly had a love affair with Dart, and I've said this repeatedly. I may be dead wrong about this, but the one thing that Daboll gave us might have been Dart. I have a strong feeling that he's the one who lobbied and pounded the table to get Dart in here, and if Dart ends up being what we hope he is, you can at least, I think, say, well, at least Daboll gave us that. That's my opinion. I have nothing to base that on other than a gut feeling.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I mean, and I don't blame him. Dart was his knight in shining armor. He was going to come here and save the day for him. So I think he's a big swagger guy. I think we learned that in Hard Knocks with the Malik Neighbors. What do they call him? The dog or something like that.
Dog. Constant effing dog is what.
Yeah. So,
which is weird when you're talking to John Mara. It's kind of a weird. I don't know.
All right, we got to have you on at some point soon to talk draft.
Yeah, let's do it. You guys.
Again, on X, it's give your X. I know I do it off the top of my head, but I'm dealing. I'm doing 6 different things.
It's at Ourlads_Cy. I guess coming up, you got a lot of draft stuff coming up. You got a newsletter that goes out every Thursday morning, every Monday morning. Monday morning's draft focus. If you want to start reading up on some guys, and we will start putting out updated top 32. We don't put out mock draft stuff until January after the early decoration. So I don't really want to dabble into that yet, but that coaching database, I think that's something that I don't want to call it a database to get too people excited. It's going to be articles, and I separate them into tiers. Like I said, defensive minded, offensive minded, former coach, former whiz kid. And I think that we will, that to me, honestly, is more important than anything draft related. Who's this coach going to be? And what are you telling the fans about this coach decision? Or with this coach decision, sorry. We're going to find something out about ownership and maybe even the general manager with who they choose as the front coach, as the head coach.
And you got a couple of plugs on the newsletter, and I agree.
nice.
The newsletter is great. So anyone who hasn't signed up for the newsletter should do so. It's awesome.
And Giants fans are used to coaching tears because that's all we've had for the last 12 years is nothing but tears. So so there we go. So with that, first, I mean, I guess we'll kind of wrap it up. Where we're at. The Kafka's going to take over. The question that came up for a lot of people asked in chat that I didn't put up on the board: why didn't they fire Shane Bowen? Quite frankly, Bowen worked for Daboll. I don't know that you really want to have multiple. You know, when they used to say, "Well, we can't move this guy to left tackle because then we're making multiple moves." That's stupid. That's a whole different thing. But who are you going to put in place of Bowen? Scheme wise, nothing's going to change. He's already gone. It's not like he's playing, he's coaching for his job. He's done. It's just riding it out. So if you give Kafka too much change, I mean, why even bother at that point? You might as well just kept Daboll and run the season out. So yeah, Bowen's out of here, but I can see why they didn't make a move right now.
Yeah. If you remove him, you got to get someone to call the plays on defense, and it would probably be Patterson. And now you take Patterson away from the defensive line a little bit, and you don't want that. You want all of his attention to be on Darius Alexander and developing everything else to have along there for the potential of him being here next year. So I don't care who's the defensive coordinator the rest of the season. Whoever it is will not be here next year.
Would you play Evan Neal at all just for the last X number of games to see if he's got anything to do, or are you just cutting him? They don't even activate the guy. Yeah, he's on the roster every week.
If they're not activating him, that tells me something's really bad in practice, or there's something bad with his attitude. I don't need to see him anymore. I don't need to see him on the field. Let him go play a guard somewhere else next year. Not coming back. Failed. And best of luck to you.
And Jalen Hyatt.
That's about as opinionated as you'll get from in a negative way.
And then Jalen Hyatt. I mean, I think we probably have seen everything. The fact that Gunner was playing outside, it wasn't just that he wasn't playing; he was playing wide receiver. He's normally a slot guy. If he's ever as a wide receiver, it's in the slot. You had him playing outside. Do we see Hyatt at all, or I'm assuming that there's got to be attitude there too, that they just
I bet there's attitude there. I would like to see him play a little bit, not because I think he's going to be back next year. I just think he does offer something. I mean, everything's going to have to align perfectly for him to come down with the deep ball. Like, the defender needs to be nowhere near him. He's got to not be against press coverage, and the ball's got to be twice as big for him.
Well,
I want to see him. I do want to see him at least get a couple more downfield throws, just because I envisioned it in my head so many times.
What an indictment on the Giants if it was true. I know it was reported a month or two ago that teams were sniffing around Evan Neal and Jalen Hyatt. I don't know if that goes back to beginning of September or if that was, but there was a report out there that those were two teams. Now, again, it might have been for like a 6th or 7th round draft pick, but Evan Neal, as John said, hasn't even played it down. He's been inactive 9 games, and he did not play in the one game he was active. So he's not even your backup guard. He's your backup to your backup guard.
Yeah.
So why even keep? I mean, she's going to walk.
I would take some grass seed for him. I'd take anything, let alone a draft pick.
On that note, we better wrap it.
So, all right. So
you ought to be flipping burgers, Cy.
All right. So with that, big thanks to Cy. Catch his reviews on BBI, BigBlueInteractive.com. Catch him on X, and of course with Ourlads Scouting. And hey, we'll be back later this week to preview, I guess, the game, but maybe just line up Kafka and who's going to play and whatever. But with that, I appreciate everybody being on. Make sure you like really helps us when you do that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. And we'll catch you later this week.